Oh, I'm the intro this time. That's what happens when you have a lot of these. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us today. This is our series of interviewing 100 congressmen, and you just so happen to be number 2. So we really appreciate it. Mm-hmm. A lot of stuff that's happening on the Hill, but I just really want to start with, you grilled the woke CEO of 23andMe for posting ads about pronouns that she couldn't even answer what they were. Right. And I think we're both curious, honestly. Did you ever actually find out what E means? What does the pronoun E stand for?
I still haven't found out what E means, what M means, what the difference between they and they are. One of them is ZE, one of them is XE. I'm still baffled, and as far as I know, she is too.
To me, it's weird because I keep seeing all of these different pronouns, and it's okay, whatever the pronouns, but we were walking through DC last night, and I see the usual LGBTQ, add all the alphabet soup into the flag, but now there's a circle as well. And we see this in society all the time, but what about in Congress? Like maybe there's the first transgender congresswoman, congressman, I'm not sure what the pronoun is correct there. How does that reflect here in Congress?
Well, listen, I think it's a major political issue across the country. One of the biggest issues of the last election cycle, in fact, was should men or boys be in girls' sports? That's something we're still talking about. It's something that Democrats have dug in on. They are hell-bent on allowing men to be in girls' sports. You know, the next step is should men be in girls' locker rooms? They seem to believe they should. Should men be in girls' bathrooms? I just had a hearing where I asked Governor Pritzker if he thinks that men should go into women's restrooms, and he couldn't say no. He wouldn't say no.
And why do you think that is the case? I mean, I understand with people on the streets or at school, but these are elected officials who are also drawing up the policy. Why is that?
You know, I think that there's this fundamentally woke ideology that rejects the differences between men and women, and wants to assert baselessly that there are no differences. I mean, you hear some of the far left people try to assert that there are no biological differences between men and women. But I think that this is a far left, progressive, utopian idea that is completely contrary to reality, and it harms people. It harms real people. We don't need boys and girls bathrooms. We don't need boys and girls sports. We've had hearings on this. We've talked to female athletes, Peyton McNabb, who had a volleyball spiked in her face by a transgender athlete, got brain damage from that. And these are really harmful ideas and policies that the left keeps pushing. And they're incredibly unpopular with the American people. So I think we need to keep calling them out and showing how crazy they are. I mean, these are things that normal people can just intuitively know are not true. Mm-hmm. Most Americans can intuitively, it is self-evidently true that there's a difference between men and women. And that the follow-up is that maybe they should be in different bathrooms and in different sporting events. So unfortunately, this is a big political issue, but I think that it's something we should continue talking about.
And you know, it's interesting because these congressmen 10 years ago would have never be saying the things that they're saying now and agreeing with what they're saying now. I mean, we know that, they're flip-floppers, but when it comes to this issue, what is it, do you think, that it's making them literally go contrary to everything that they know to be true?
Yeah.
It's wild.
It really is, and I think that there is a Democrat base, and it's a large and growing portion of their party who demands that they say these things. And they're so out of touch with the rest of the country, but they know, Governor Pritzker knows, we just had a hearing with him, that he can't go under oath and on record saying that boys shouldn't be in girls' bathrooms. He knows that that's going to upset his base. That's where we're at now.
Yeah. Switching courses a little bit to Somalia's favorite congresswoman, Ilhan Omar. We just ran into her in the elevator, and I asked her, why did you say that the Somalian president is your president? Now, I know that you said that the U.S. would be better off if she was deported back to Somalia. So my question is, how would you do it? Would you and Tom Homan walk up to her door, knock on her door, and say it's time to go?
Well, I won't get into how that would be done. But what I will say is that I don't think that it makes sense to bring in a virtually unlimited number of people from parts of the world and cultures that are not compatible with our own. I think that all of the prosperity that we get to enjoy in the United States. The opportunity, the ability to live in safe communities, the ability to enjoy the sort of economic prosperity that we get to enjoy in this country, all of that sits on top of a cultural foundation. And that's a cultural foundation that took many, many decades, centuries to create. And I don't think that we should be undermining that through mass migration. And I think that's a serious problem here.
And almost on a more serious note, how is it that she's actually able to say these things and almost proclaim allegiance to a different country, and she hasn't been censured, and she's still in Congress? Like, what is it that's holding up Congress members from being like, enough is enough?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that there's a large portion of the American people who find many of the comments that she said extraordinarily distasteful and anti-American. And contrary to the values that this country has held for a long, long time. But listen, she was elected in her district. Her district has a large population, apparently, who agrees with her. And I think that's concerning.
How did we even end up in this situation in the first place, where an elected official who oversees stuff like immigration laws, who then subsequently leads into the stuff that you say we shouldn't be doing, how does this even happen in the first place, that somebody gets elected that is anti-American, anti-Western civilization, rejects just traditional Judeo-Christian values, yet is overseeing some of the most important stuff in general in America? Yeah,
I mean, I think it starts with a virtually limitless immigration policy. Right now, we've had open borders for 4 years under Joe Biden. Where people from all over the globe have poured into our country. We believe it's probably north of 15 million people. Totally unvetted, from all over the globe. We didn't know where these people are coming from. We didn't know who they were. We didn't know what foreign nations they were associated with. These aren't just people from Latin America or from Mexico. And that's a problem. And whenever those people come into the United States, remember, we do a census every 10 years. And congressional apportionment for each state is based on the population in that state, not based on the number of citizens, but the population. So states that bring in large numbers of illegal aliens, think of California, get greater congressional representation because of that. And Democrats have talked for a long time explicitly that part of their grand political strategy is to provide a path to citizenship for illegal aliens that would then allow them to vote. We just had a vote earlier this week where over 150 Democrats voted to allow illegal aliens to vote in D.C. elections.
Oh, wow.
This is not conservative conspiracy theorists. This is literally their plan, I think, to fundamentally shape our election system in their favor. I think that there's a lot of questions now about how successful that's going to be. We've seen a massive shift of Hispanics into the Republican Party. And the reality is that Hispanics, and these are legal immigrants, share the same concerns that we have. They don't like the woke agenda. They don't like open borders. And they're moving into the Republican Party. I think that's an incredible thing. So we'll see if Democrats stick with their strategy that they've had. But that's been their plan so far.
You know, and going towards like cultural Marxism, which essentially says that we have to break up the culture in order to take over and make socialist the country that we want. We see that exact same thing happening with all of these Somalians, not just the Somalians, but groups of people in certain areas. Now they elected Ilhan Omar, and now we're having all these problems. We have the same issues in some parts of Texas, Florida, and it's starting to expand. And it looks like what they want to have happen is a balkanization of America, where if you can't take over culture, break it up to the point where you have no more culture, no more states. What are we doing to fight against that? And are people really aware that that's happening?
Yeah, I mean, you put it really well. I mean, Marxism is based on class distinctions between groups of people that are pitted against each other. Cultural Marxism is sort of the next step, which is instead of an economic distinction, it's either a racial or an ethnic distinction or a sexual distinction or some other way that you can group people into different sort of atomized pods and then pit them against each other. One of the big tenets of leftism now is a word that you'll hear in academic circles, intersectionality.
Oh, yeah.
And it's Democrats taking these different atomized groups and coalescing them into a political unit against Republicans, against conservatives, and against Christians. That is their political strategy here.
It seems to backfire against them, though, right? In the fact that they're playing this identity, critical race theory card nonstop. It seems like they've overplayed it to the point of where now their base is clashing with each other, and we might have to hyperfixate more. Exactly.
And there's an inherent contradiction in this. If you have a group of traditional Muslims, for instance, and you want to politically join them with a feminist, for instance. Those two don't match. They don't mix. Those are incompatible, contradictory ideas. And that political house of cards will collapse eventually. And I think we're starting to see some of that.
You're telling me that queers for Sharia law or Palestine doesn't make sense?
Gays for Gaza is not a coherent
Chickens
ideology.
for KFC at the end of the day.
I mean, it seems to be like, and Tyler Boyer from Turning Point said this really well a few years ago when at one of his breakout sessions. He says that the Democrats have tons of issues that they disagree with. What they figured out is if we just shut up, win first, and then we can implement everything that we want to do. That was the Joe Biden administration. Now it seems like they've gone so far to the left that they don't even know what's up or down. We saw David Hogg just got removed from his position because he's not DEI friendly apparently.
The DNC rules, right?
Yeah. Where do you see the Democrats, or what do you feel like they're going to go from here?
That's a great question, because they have pitted their own ideology, which rejects reality, which rejects the biological reality, for instance, that men and women are different. And you pit that against the American people who can see this stuff. Again, these are self-evident truths. The only people who can assert that men and women are not different are people who have spent 10 years getting PhDs. Everybody else can see that that's a reality. So I do think that this is something that will come crashing down. You're starting to see that. There was, call it 5 years ago, there was a time whenever leftists could spew really insane things, and we've called them out in the hearings, like the pronouns, like Catherine Marr, who is the CEO of NPR, tweeting all kinds of flagrantly anti-American things, saying really nasty things about white people as a class. And there was a time whenever that was all it took, if you were a Democrat, to sort of rise through the institutional ranks. And now all of that, the tide has shifted so much that the American people are just sick of it. And I don't think that that's going to be a viable political path for the Democrats. On a selfish note, I'm thrilled that they're continuing to
we
go
fully
down
endorse
that
it over. On that point, I used to be a big fan of NPR. I used to like PBS, right? But to watch where it is today, it's absolutely woke garbage. And to know that our taxpayer money is essentially going towards that is ridiculous. I know there's not constantly, but recently a big push to get that stuff defunded, and it failed this time again. Why is that? Why is that the case?
Well, it hasn't failed yet. We've got a vote later today to potentially defund NPR and PBS. We had a procedural vote yesterday that passed. I think we're going to be able to get it done. I think that there's a, and we'll see if I'm right or wrong. But I think that we've gotten to the point where if you're a Republican, this is something we've been talking about for decades, and you can see the stuff that they've been saying. NPR famously, in their own words, stated that they weren't going to cover the Hunter Biden laptop story because it was a distraction. That's what they said. It was a distraction.
They didn't even say misinformation, disinformation, whatever.
Just a distraction. Now, I've always said that if conservative media went to me, and Fox News, Newsmax, talk radio, whatever, and said, I would like taxpayer dollars, I want some kind of subsidies or something, I would tell them no. Because I don't think the federal government should be involved in creating or sustaining state-sponsored media. That's something China and North Korea have. I certainly don't think we should be doing that to fund left-wing institutions that are undermining our cultural fabric. That's a problem. And I think Republicans, to go back to your question, are starting to see that. The original attacks on Republicans were things like, you guys are the ones defunding Big Bird. In the past, Democrats would march Big Bird around Capitol Hill. And they'd try to demonize us for pulling that funding back. well, PBS has spun off Sesame Street. Sesame Street's going to be just fine. That's a very popular and lucrative franchise.
Yeah.
Especially in Iraq.
Right, exactly. Especially whenever they're funded by our tax dollars.
Right.
So I think that so many Republicans have seen what these institutions are and who runs them, that it's going to be tough to vote no on defunding them.
That's great to hear. Yeah. And I'm glad we cleared that up, because I probably was looking at the last round of trying to go at it.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Congressman, for meeting with us and talking, and we hope to see you again.
Yeah, thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you.